Hello, and welcome to part 2 of Sonic Mega Collection for the GameCube. In part 1, we looked at the games and movies sections, but in this one we're going to be taking a look at the comics, illustrations, the manuals, basically the things that don't have video, audio, or move. So how about we head over to the comics section and see what they have in this side of things. We get given a whole bunch of Sonic the Hedgehog comics, ranging from number 1 to number 115, but first off I reckon we'll look at Sonic the Hedgehog first, because out of all of the ones here, this is the one that has the entire comic, just from start to end, even like the very back side of the comic with some promotional material as far as I'm aware anyway. And what it mainly has is the style of the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, but in some sort of comic version. So you can take your time to look at all of the pages here and there, see what they have to offer. But one thing that's rather interesting with this one, in my opinion, because you can look at this in your own time if you pick up Sonic Mega Collection for yourself, is if you go over to the page 18, in part 2 of the section of Lizard of Oz, there's actually a reference to the Sega Genesis as well as Sonic collecting the Chaos Emeralds, because as you can see right here, at the minute he's not able to defeat the enemy for how he is, but luckily with all the Chaos Emeralds in hand, that's 7 of them, and 50 rings, he jumps into the signpost and enters the special stage. So that's pretty much exactly, how it was in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, because you need to collect 50 rings, and then that was the way to enter the special stage and collect the Chaos Emeralds. In fact, even on this bit, he even says, "How's your Genesis skills today, kid?" With all these references here and there to the Sega Genesis controller for collecting them, and I don't know, I just find it so interesting, especially since when he collects them in 50, he literally turns into Super Sonic that way, and then he's able to take out the enemy just like that. I always found that really interesting as a kid, just to find that they actually referenced towards that, or at least not referenced towards it, because that was how Sonic actually collected the Chaos Emeralds, but it's really fun to see, in my opinion anyway. And of course, for all of the other comics, I'm not really going to go over each one, because really, even though Sonic first shows the entire comic, the other ones don't really do that. They just show you the cover art, but I still think that's rather nice, because comic art is bloomin' awesome, man. Especially the amount of detail that's put into it and everything. It makes you want to go out and buy it. When I first saw this as a kid, particularly in Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the PS2, I really wanted to go out and get those comics. But damn, I think some of them are a bit rare nowadays. Plus, these days on the internet, you can very easily actually just look at these comics online and read the whole entire thing that way, but some of you might want to collect them yourself, really. It really just depends on the type of person you are, but you can look at the covers for them. Pretty much for all of them. So that's rather nifty here and there. And there isn't really much else to say about them, apart from, hey, look, it's nice art really for Mega Collection. But like I said, if you really want to find out more about it, there's the internet these days. I'm assuming when Mega Collection came out at the time, it was pretty much different, because you couldn't just look it up online or anything, You had to probably go out and buy the comic yourself, but times have changed, that's for sure. So yeah, we got Sonic the Hedgehog, all of those comics here and there. Alongside that, we also get the Knuckles the Echidna comics as well. Yes, Knuckles had his own comic series, and they went on for a long time, especially with the ones that are about the Dark Legion, which then led on to just the normal Knuckles the Echidna comics, and that went from issue number 1 to number 32. So yeah, nice art, and it was also really nostalgic just to find that it's by Archie as well, because damn. I think even now they do make really good comics, because believe it or not, even though Sonic Forces came out, there is a comic version of Sonic Forces. So it's nice to see that, comics do exist here now. They're definitely not as popular as they used to be back in the day, but still, it's nice to see that their existence is still around. But yeah, you get it. It's like Knuckles the Echidna, and there's also Sonic Super Special number 1 to number 15. These are the only ones that I'm actually gonna show the full entire thing, because otherwise we'd be forever looking at all the other ones. And there's 15 of them, so it really doesn't take that long to go through it, does it? So how about we just have a nice old look through the art to see what it was like, especially with Sonic Kids. If you press the A button, by the way, it gets rid of this menu. Just what I mentioned that to make things a bit easier. And zooming in might also be a bit more detailed here and there, but I'm playing this on a CRT and can't really read crap, so, you know. But I'm using a special scaler in order to record this from the GameCube and ensure it's in the best quality possible and stuff. Things are quite techy nowadays, but what I do. But yeah, Sonic Super Special again. Wait, okay, a guest starring Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Cool. I've actually only just noticed that. I noticed Manic as well as Sonya in the background for that Sonic Underground cartoon. But damn, I've only literally just noticed this right now, so that's different here and there, isn't it? And there's also the Sonic Adventure. Yes, comic. Sonic Adventure comic. It's not exactly like Sonic Adventure. It's not, if you've played Sonic Adventure, the story just in comic form. There are some extra parts here and there because I did actually take a little bit of a look at it myself online, just out of mild curiosity, and it is quite interesting here and there, really. And there's also a giant 48 pages of this season, and finally this one right here. And then the final one is, of course, other series. This is basically just a random mishmash here and there. Even though there was a Sonic Adventure version, there was also a Sonic Blast version of a comic too. And in particular, I think it's on this one that it said it had, yes, it did have a Sonic Quest. But I want to look for the one that says, yes, this one, Sonic and Knuckles. There was also a comic version of that. I find it really interesting to find that some games we played do have comic versions, because it goes way more deeper into the lore and backstory and everything. So if you are really curious to find out more about the story, as well as how things happen in the first place in the game, sometimes reading the comics is just the best way to do it, really. And you get also really awesome artwork here and there, so that's rather nice. Sonic the Hedgehog, Tails' buddy. Yep, or at least, no, sorry, Tails, Sonic the Hedgehog's buddy. I got that modeled up, my bad. Tails also got his comics, just, wow. At the time, Sonic was huge. He was really, really big when it came out, and was a rival to Mario, that's for sure. But that's the comic sections. Now we might as well have a look and see what Illustrations has to offer. This video isn't really super interesting. Part 1 is mainly the main criteria that you're going to be looking for, but just for additional things. I just thought it was necessary just to cover what extras as well as manuals it has to offer. I basically wanted it to dissect the game, because I wasn't really satisfied with the way I did it with Plus, back when I recorded the PS2 anyway. In the extra sections, you of course get a look at all of the information for all these characters. Like for Sonic, it says he loves freedom and hates injustice. He can be short-tempered, but if he sees anyone in trouble, he's the first to help out. He's Sonic, the world's fastest hedgehog. And of course you can see the old artwork. The old artwork in the US version, which was actually from the character style book. Yes, there was a Japanese version, a US version, etc. But one thing I do find kind of funny is, on each of these characters you get to see like their modern art, but the thing that it says is really cheesy. It says, "This Sonic looks more hip with his cool green eyes." I would say more the shoes, personally, and not really the green eyes. I don't know really why it says that, but either way, I just find that super amusing myself. And I believe, on the 5th one, that was, yes, Sonic Adventure 2, because the shoe style changed. If you go back to number 4, there was that, but then he upgraded to that for some reason. And then after that, he just went back to this, so I don't quite know what happened there. I guess not a lot of people really liked the art style here and there, really. The same with Miles Tails per Hour, some information if you want to read about it, the original artwork, as well as in the US, and the modern style to him. I do rather like Tails' modern style for what it is and everything, because he definitely seems a lot more chill in the latest ones, that's for sure, because in the original, he looks rather cute, and, you know, basically just innocent. This one, he seems to know his stuff, especially with gear. There's a lot more personality to it. I suppose it would be, though, because it was much later down the line, wasn't it? Knuckles also gets some limelight as well, because that's the original artwork, and it actually says here, on the Japanese character style book, with the description, through his fierce eyes, you can tell that he's a lone wolf. Indeed. But of course there wasn't a US version of it on this collection for some reason. But this is his modern style, isn't it? He looks a lot more relaxed ever since he appeared in Sonic Adventure. much agreed, because by that time he realized that Sonic wasn't the enemy, and then he's like, oh cool, he's actually a good guy, and Eggman's the bad one. Or at least Robotnik in that time, anyway. We might as well also look at Dr. Eggman / Dr. Robotnik. Most of the time, I tend to say Dr. Eggman just because that's what I've always said when I played Sonic as a kid, but for those of you who want to say Dr. Robotnik, that's fine too, but there's other ways to say it, really. In fact, when Sonic the Hedgehog 1 came out on the Mega Drive / Genesis, in Japan, he was called Dr. Eggman, not Robotnik, so that's kind of why it can get a bit confusing here and there, but I've always just stuck with Eggman myself. With his amazing IQ of 300. Goddamn, and he's still no match for Sonic. Blimey. I really love his original artwork, because he doesn't come off as like menacing or evil, he just comes off as just this silly, goofy scientist here and there, and that's just great about Eggman Man. Eggman Man, that's different right there. And of course there is a US character style book, and the new one, which basically has him in all these different poses. Most of these artworks actually come from the Sonic Advance series, because I do notice the art style is very similar to that, because I grew up with Sonic Advance 1 to 3 as a kid, and I saw those in the instruction booklet as well as on the box, which I think is just dope. And other characters, yes, as well as Knuckles, Tails, and all the main ones, there were also ones which got a bit of limelight too, like with Amy for instance, Shadow, I'm gonna get rid of the menu though, Rouge as well, and Big the Cat, except the description on this one is also quite weird. I would look at each description of each character, but it doesn't work as well. Despite his large size, he is a gentle, warm-hearted guy who just happens to talk very slowly. He is always looking for his buddy Froggy. I don't know, I just find it amusing the fact it says he talks really slowly. All the other ones do have descriptions, but they're not really as interesting, as it basically just tells you what they do. I really like looking at the ones that have just some sort of cheesy dialogue here and there, or just something a little interesting which we'll find later. And yes, E102 Gamma from Sonic Adventure, as well as Chow, because they made their first appearance in Sonic Adventure, but other ones known as the Hero Chow, of course, debuted in Sonic Adventure 2, and the Dark Chow. A Chow? No, Chow. But the thing that's really interesting is Cream the Rabbit. Cream the Rabbit will make her first appearance in Sonic Advance 2. This adds another cute character to the bunch. A thing that's interesting is, if you didn't watch part 1, I mentioned that when Sonic Mega Collection came out in Japan, Sonic Advance 2 also launched on the same day. So that's kind of why this one says Cream the Rabbit, you know, will make her first appearance. Not made, make. She didn't exist at this point. Because at that time the game did come out, and in other regions, known as the US as well as Europe, Sonic Advance 2 came out a little bit later, so when Mega Collection came out, this was basically hinting towards a new character being available in a Sonic series, which is pretty clever if you ask me, as well as the Sonic Advance 2 trailer that I showed up in part 1 anyway. If you haven't watched part 1, by the way, card, there's a little card at the top, click it, it takes you to it and keeps you up to date if you're a little lost. So yeah. And finally, we might as well look at the illustrations and the package designs of the Sonic series. Yes, indeed, because this one is the Sonic Adventure package illustration, as well as the Sonic Adventure 2 package illustration. And also Sonic Adventure 2 Battle gets given it as well. I just like looking at illustrations, man. They're just detailed, they're really interesting to look at, and it's just fine, really. It's just nice to look at and just appreciate the artwork here and there. And I especially love CG illustrations, right? Particularly from games that you think the graphics these days don't look as good. When you look at the CG illustrations, they are just great. Because this is Sonic Adventure, right? Not this one in particular. But 3 and 4 almost just look damn badass. Especially this one right here. As well as Sonic with Eggman. And Sonic with Knuckles as well. If you even look at games like Mario 64, for instance, you can literally go onto Google Images and type in Mario 64 CG illustration, and god damn, the renders and high quality are just on point. Metal Mario looks great as well as the environment, so you just think, wow, damn, it's kind of a shame that it didn't look like that on the N64, but You know, the N64 was a 64-bit system, and that was pretty groundbreaking at the time, but those renders, man, bloomin' great. Illustration free, I'm going to go over this really briefly though, it's just kind of illustrations here and there, like a 2001 calendar of Sonic, a Japanese calling card with a quote that says, "I'll never look back. I've got no regrets, cause time doesn't wait for me. I choose to go my own way. Sonic the Hedgehog." Quoted. I do also appreciate the Christmas themes here and there, particularly on the 5th one, after we look at this Japanese calling card anyway of Sonic Adventure 2, because it just looks cute. You know, it's all Christmas themed and that, except I do feel like half of them did basically just take some official artwork and then just slap something over the top. Like, that is clearly from Tails, the artwork that we saw earlier of him running, but they just slapped this sort of Christmas jumper on top of him. But still, I'm probably rambling on a bit too much for like the illustration side, and I don't want to bite too much. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the illustrations and the comics. So that's the extras done. Next up, we might as well look at the manual section, which is right over towards here. So for those of you who sometimes pick up games but it doesn't come with a manual, this is a lifesaver, because it means that you don't really have to worry about getting the game boxed with the manual, because it might actually be more expensive. Particularly when I got Streets of Rage 3 for my birthday, actually, the cost of the cartridge alone was quite expensive, and I imagine it was even more boxed and complete with the manual. Thanks to my friend, actually, who found that, goddamn. But I might as well just look at Sonic the Hedgehog, or at least the Genesis manual versions anyway. It's kind of interesting in the PAL version of Sonic Mega Collection because they contain the Genesis manuals. You see, the Sega Genesis over in Europe was known as the Sega Mega Drive, and the manuals had a completely different design, where instead of looking like some sort of book that you go through, it looked like some kind of leaflet. Uninteresting, in my opinion. So it's kind of nice that I get to look at how the Genesis manuals were. It especially must be nostalgic for people who grew up with the Sega Genesis and remember reading through these manuals as kids, as well as hints and tips here and there. I don't really want to go through every single manual, because otherwise that would be like extremely boring, but I'm only briefly going through things here and there showing similarities. I've noticed in the older manuals, not only do they tend to show you like more power-ups here and there, but they tend to show you like the whole game. Like, and I mean every zone, right? Because this one even has number 6, Scrap Brain Zone. That's the final zone in the game, as well as the secret zones and just everything. I find that all the later manuals didn't do that, maybe just because they felt it spoilt parts of the game and it was better to discover it yourself? And even still, you get a look at official artwork for like all of the badniks at the time. All of these comic, high quality, I was going to say renders, but it wouldn't really be renders because it was printed out, wasn't it? It wasn't really anything published online or anything. And also Sonic survival tips. Grab all the rings you can. I'm pretty sure every Sonic fan knows about that one, but still. There's even like a scorebook that you could note down and see, well, high scores, compare it and stuff. I don't really know any friends or people that did that. I don't even know if that was actually in the Mega Drive manual for that, but still. Even though I'm not going to show off every single one, I'm at least going to show off parts of them, which I think are really interesting. So first off, how about we look at the end of the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 manual, because something is really fascinating about this one. Okay, at the end of the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 manual, this is probably going to take you a blast to the past. Warning to owners of projection TVs. Still pictures or images may cause permanent picture tube damage or mark the phosphor of the CRT. Avoid repeated or extended use of video games on large screen projection televisions. Times have changed! We don't have CRTs anymore. That is really nifty, considering when, around the time of the 16-bit days with the Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, CRTs were the big thing, right? We didn't really have flat screen televisions or anything back in them days, so just saying the word CRT in the manual is just a revelation to me for some reason. And I hope it is to you too anyway, either that or I'm just weird. If you go over to page 5 of the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 manual, you'll actually be able to read some interesting info on Knuckles the Echidna himself. So it says his age is 15 years old. I think in Sonic Heroes though it says he's 16 years old, so the fact that he's just somehow grown 1 year old out of all those span of years makes no sense, but whatever. And his favourite food is fruit, especially grapes. Recently I've actually been playing Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, And if you go onto the character file on that also says, like, he likes fruit, in brackets especially grapes. So I guess that's just a thing with Knuckles, really. If you actually met him, just give him some grapes. It makes him happy for some reason. And his special abilities are discovering hidden passageways and using his knuckles to dig. I'm assuming they did that just for people who read through the manual and then they realized that, oh wait, I could actually use Knuckles to find some hidden secrets here and there. Additionally, another funny thing is if you go to page 14 of the same manual, it says about Sonic Superplay tips, tells you all of like the secret things here and there. But if you go over to 15, it says more Sonic Superplay tips, and on the other page, even more Sonic Superplay tips. I just love the sense of humor that this manual has, man. It's brilliant. Here's an interesting thing about the Sonic & Knuckles manual. You gotta remember, Sonic & Knuckles was a lock-on game, because it means, or meant, that you could put Sonic the Hedgehog 2 or Sonic the Hedgehog 3 on top, and then it would create other games like Sonic 3 and Knuckles. In this manual, it does mention that, because it says about lock-on Sonic 3 with Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, shows you how to do it, and it even has, like, the screen telling you how to play it and everything. So the fact that it tells you how to play an entirely new game is just, damn, that's something for sure. And on page 14, I believe, or at least page 15, or at least 14 on this collection anyway, it also tells you how to lock onto Sonic 2 as well. And even says Knuckles and Sonic 2, how to play it. I don't know, I just find it interesting to find out it managed to pack in 3 games onto Sonic & Knuckles. It's kind of like a hidden surprise, because people who bought Sonic & Knuckles, they just thought, oh cool, it's just Sonic & Knuckles on its own. But no, if you look deep into the manual, discoveries are made. This is why it was good to read manuals back in the day, man. And I reckon that'll do it for the manual section. Really, if you go to the other ones, it's similar to the other things, where it has a prologue to the story, some power-ups here and there, some official artwork of enemy designs, and really it's just something similar. I don't like to show off repetitious content here and there. And that's pretty much it for Sonic Mega Collection for the GameCube. I've dissected this game to smithereens, and we might as well end it off by going to the options section. And then some high notes. And also a brief look at options, but that's not really going to take too long. Let's go audio, you can set stereo or mono. Controller configuration if you're not happy with how the layout is on the GameCube controller. Language select if you want to, of course, look at it in a different language. And of course, credits. And that's where our journey ends here. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this look at Sonic Mega Collection for the GameCube. In ways, I do kind of wish that I grew up with this version more. But I do like how in Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the PS2 and Xbox as well as PC, I think that it had save states. So it meant that you could easily just save from where you are and then just resume next time. That's something that the GameCube doesn't have, really. So the fact that the Plus version just packs in more is more worth the money if you want to, like, buy the one out of the 2. But these days, these games are kind of obsolete, in my opinion. Well, not so much if you want to play secret games here and there, because oddly enough, even though I have mentioned about the Ultimate Genesis Collection on the PS3 and Xbox 360, that doesn't feature Knuckles and Sonic 2 or Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So anyway, this can actually be a cheaper way and a better way to play like those lock-on games, because they didn't really utilize lock-on for some reason in that game. I'll take a look at that game at some point though. But either way, it's been fun taking a look deep inside Sonic Mega Collection. I hope it's been nostalgic, or even a new discovery for you if you didn't grow up with this. And I'll just roll these credits, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.